So now we've reached the top half of these movies.
It's the final countdown.
And from this point on, I genuinely love every entry going forward. But that being said, each movie does need a ranking. And to keep up with my theme of controversy, having the original at number 7, coming in at number 6 is going to be Friday the 13th, Part 2. A lot of people put this in their top 3 Friday the 13th movies. And I get it. There is a lot to love in this movie. You definitely have a better cast of characters compared to the original. You have one of, if not the best final girls in the entire franchise in Ginny. You have the introduction of Jason Voorhees. And you have that really bold opening where they kill off Alice from the first movie in the opening scene. I love that decision. But to be honest, these movies are all about Jason.
Jason! Jason! Jason!
And when I don't like the Jason portrayal, that's going to heavily affect my ranking for a movie. And being that Steve Dash and Warrington Gillette is one of my least favorite Jason portrayals, along with not liking the sackhead look in the overalls, it just really colors my opinion about the movie as a whole. I think this movie got everything else right, other than a long recap at the beginning that I did not feel was necessary, considering this came out less than a year after the first movie, and this Jason portrayal. Everything else in the movie was really good, but ultimately, even though I love this movie, there are 5 more that I love just a little bit more. So next up, coming in to start my top 5, is gonna be Freddy vs. Jason. Now out of the gate, this movie has issues. I hate the choppy slow motion they chose to use here, and I'm not quite sure why everybody goes flying through the air in this movie like it's Dragon Ball Z. This is my least favorite Jason portrayal out of the entire franchise, and the fact that he's afraid of water pisses me off beyond belief. For all that it did wrong though, at the end of the day, this is still arguably the 2 biggest horror icons in history facing off. And in one corner, while you have my least favorite Jason, you still have Robert Englund doing his damn thing in what I think is one of the best Freddy Krueger portrayals of that entire franchise. I would put this Freddy up there with Dream Warriors and the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So when you have Robert Englund on screen doing his thing, with at least a tolerable Jason, every time they share a scene together is fucking perfect. Their fight at the end delivered on the title of this movie in a big way. It was just this perfect mix of gore and comedy. It was everything that I was hoping for when I saw these 2 face off. There's a couple characters that I genuinely like in this movie. Unfortunately, they all die at some point. Jason gets a high body count. You get an amazing face-off between Freddy and Jason twice in this movie. And despite all of its shortcomings, in a lot of ways, it's very entertaining to watch. And more importantly, it delivered on its promise of Freddy vs. Jason. I only wish Kane Hodder could have faced off against Robert Englund. But Freddy vs. Jason comes in at number 5. Next up at number 4, in a ranking that most people are going to say is way too high for this movie, I have Friday the 13th, Part 3D. I can't explain why I love this movie so much. Call it nostalgia, call it Richard Brooker. But to me, this movie has just as strong characters as Part 2. It has one of my favorite characters not named Jason Voorhees, and that's Shelly, baby.
God damn it, Shelly. Why do you always have to be such an asshole?
Asshole. Damn it, Shelley! Why do you do these stupid things?
I will always unapologetically love Shelly's character. To me, Chris is a pretty good final girl. She holds her own against Jason multiple times through this movie. You get an epic final scene in the barn. Richard Brooker is just an amazing Jason. He really set the bar for what this character could be and what he should be going forward. I think all of these future actors have to thank Richard Brooker at some level because he gave them the blueprint for Jason Voorhees. This is the movie where he gets his mask, of course, and then you get that creepy imagery of Jason staring at Chris through the barn window that still haunts me. To me, there's just really a lot to love about this movie. Again, it's not without its flaws. The first half of this movie is pretty slow, but the second half is just so damn good. So between our final girl Chris, Shelly baby, Jason getting his mask, Richard Brooker's performance, a great second half of the movie, and then that one final creepy image of Jason in the window, this movie gets high marks for me. Obviously, the overdone 3D effects really aged this movie poorly, and like I mentioned, the first half is pretty slow. This movie is probably higher in my ranking than it is in most people's, and that is in large part due to nostalgia. When I was younger, this was without a doubt my favorite entry in the Friday the 13th series. So I'm never going to apologize for having Friday the 13th 3D at number 4. Next up, in my favorite part of every ranking video, we're in the top 3. And I'm sure a lot of you are pissed off because by process of elimination, you know one that's still in there. That's right, that's going to be number 3 for me. And that is the Friday the 13th 2009 remake. And I may have just lost 10 subscribers just by this ranking, but I love this movie. To me, this is one of the most brutal and visceral Jasons of the entire series. That opening 15 to 20 minutes is the best Friday the 13th anything I've ever seen. This is the best sequence in the Friday the 13th franchise. If the entire movie could have lived up to this first act, this would probably be number 2 or number 1. It was that good. I love the kills in this movie. A lot of people say they have issues with the characters, which I just don't get. Don't get me wrong, there is a charm about the 80s that these slasher films now just can't live up to. In my opinion, acting has just gotten so much better. While a lot of these characters might be annoying, they're definitely more believable than their 1980s counterparts. I absolutely love Clay Miller as our protagonist. We get Jared Padalecki, who's a very capable actor, who really makes this believable. I was a big fan of the dynamic of the sibling, the brother looking for his sister. This definitely felt like an homage to Part 4, the final chapter. And for me, I'm always going to like the sibling angle more than the romantic angle. It was a huge shock when the potential romantic interest was killed near the end of the movie. I absolutely love that Trent got his karma near the end of this movie, and it was one of those times where I found myself rooting for Jason. To me, there's just so much to love about this movie, especially when you compare it to other recent remakes, like that 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street disaster. And even in my opinion, this is much better than the Child's Play remake. So between an absolutely brutal Jason, some awesome kills, a great protagonist in Clay Miller, and some believable characters, I really love this movie, and all the complaints I hear about it, to me honestly don't make much sense. Now the movie's not perfect, although all these characters to me are believable. We do have some damn annoying characters, and some unnecessary ones like Donnie the Redneck. I don't see why he was in this movie at all. At times it felt more like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie than a Friday the 13th movie. I think that complaint is totally warranted, that's fair. And unfortunately, the movie never lived up to that first act. Although to me it was enjoyable the entire way through, there's no denying that the strongest part of this movie was at the very beginning. So it is perhaps a little bit front-loaded. But to me overall, this is just a great time, and I have Friday the 13th Remake at number 3. Alright, so here we are, the top 2, and the very end of my Friday the 13th series. Now by process of elimination, you know we have Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, and Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. And I'm finally out of the controversy territory, as these tend to be the top 2 movies for most fans. And for good reason. This one was so hard to pick between the two, I literally fluctuate all the time. But for my final rankings, number 2 is gonna be Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. This movie is the absolute perfect blend in this franchise of horror and comedy. I love so many things about this entry. We get a great Jason performance. We get a franchise that stopped taking itself too seriously and was able to acknowledge that, yeah, this premise is kind of fucking crazy. This is obviously an excellent Tommy Jarvis portrayal by Tom Matthews.
Hey, asshole! It's me, you won't remember? Come on! Come on, chicken shit! Come on, I'm standing here waiting! Come on, you pussy! Come on, you pussy! Come on, you pussy!
Another thing I always go back and forth about is Corey Feldman versus Tom Matthews for my favorite Tommy Jarvis. I love Megan Garris as a final girl in the romantic interest of Tommy. How can you not love Sheriff Garris? He's one of these guys that, yeah, he's a dickhead, but he is looking out for his daughter. And it was truly sad to see him die, even though what a way to go out. Although this movie plays into the comedy more and breaks the fourth wall, we still have some really good shots here. This is one of the best looking Friday the 13th movies of the series. We have some iconic set pieces with Jason standing on top of the RV. We have, of course, the lake of fire with Tommy and Jason. We have the creepy image of the camp counselor rising up from the bed and Jason just standing behind her through the window.
See you in the morning.
I love that shot. Absolutely love it. And of course, we get the Alice Cooper soundtrack, the best soundtrack in the franchise.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
We also get the second best intro sequence in the franchise behind the remake of Jason being reanimated, just like Frankenstein. I'll always love the way he turns to the camera after putting on his mask. And the opening really set the tone with that horror sense, and then that ridiculous James Bond style opening with Jason cutting the screen. It let us know exactly what we're in for. I personally really don't have any flaws with this entry. I could watch this any day of the week. The only reason that it's number 2 is there's one movie that I like even a little bit more. And as everybody knows by now, my number 1 Friday the 13th movie is going to be part 4, The Final Chapter. We had Ted White.
Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's corkscrew?
No, not that Ted. Anyway, we had Ted White, who is my favorite Jason. We had the return of Tom Savini, and the only movie he would return for in the franchise. We have the introduction of not only Tommy Jarvis, but Big Sister Trish, who's one of my favorite final girls. And Tommy is obviously my favorite character in the series other than Jason himself. You have some absolutely brutal kills. I have more kills out of this entry than any in the franchise on my top 13 kills list. And you get multiple characters to root for. This is the first time in Friday the 13th that there was a lot of people I didn't want to see die. Obviously Trish and Tommy, Gordon the dog, I mean come on. Rob Dyer, who's looking for his sister that was killed in part 2. And then, of course, Jimmy. You have to love Jimmy.
Jimmy's been watching you. You're just Jimmy's type. Jimmy's new in town. Jimmy, doesn't really know anyone. Jimmy would like to get to know you.
He was just a lot of fun to watch on screen. So this movie really gave us characters that I actually enjoyed watching, and I wasn't just waiting for Jason to kill them all. But man, when he did, it was fantastic.
Bro!
Ted White is just so damn violent in this movie. I absolutely love him as Jason. You have an amazing final act here with Jason chasing Trish through the campsite, and you really have to feel for Trish. As for the first time, she's not just a final girl trying to survive. She's a girl that's trying to protect her little brother. She also puts up one hell of a fight. She beats the hell out of Jason, slices his hand right down the middle, throws a TV over his head. Trish is a badass. So between my favorite Jason portrayal and the return of Tom Savini and his effects on these brutal kills, Tommy and Trish Jarvis, Jimmy.
Jimmy's ready. Jimmy's got some new moves.
Stop, Jimmy!
Check Jimmy out.
a great final act with Jason chasing Trish and Jason being killed. And they really got creative using the atmosphere to their advantage. I'll always love that Jason kill when the thunder strikes, just stabbing the girl with the spear, with just the silhouette of their shadows. That is beautifully done. This movie to me just really has so much to love. This and Jason Lives will forever be my top 2 in this franchise. Alright everybody, for the final time, that's gonna do it for my Friday the 13th video. That's a wrap. Please be sure to let me know your ranking list in the comments down below, as I'm definitely eager to see where we agree and where we disagree. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing right over here so you don't miss any future content. And if you're curious to check out any of my other Friday the 13th rankings or my review series, here's a few to get you started right on this side right over here. For the first time since I started my channel, my next video won't be a Friday the 13th video, but regardless, we'll see you in the next one.